You've probably done it. The hallway light's on, a moth sitting on the wall, dead still, and then suddenly that shudder runs through its wings. And what did you do? Probably looked away, or worse, grabbed a rolled up newspaper. For generations, we've treated moths as nothing more than pests, dim-witted insects that fly straight into light bulbs and chew holes in our jumpers. But what you're about to find out is going to completely change the way you look at that trembling shadow on your wall. Because that shudder isn't random. It's not some glitch in the nervous system of a primitive bug. It's a signal, and if you knew what that signal actually meant, you might never be able to look at a moth the same way again. Here's what science has uncovered, something hardly anyone knows. That wing shudder you're seeing is, more often than not, a behaviour called voluntary thermal vibration. The moth is literally contracting its thorax muscles over and over without taking off to generate internal heat before flight. Unlike butterflies, which rely on the sun to warm their bodies, most moths are creatures of the night, and night doesn't offer a scrap of sunlight, so they've evolved their own biological engine, a heating system that can lift the temperature of the thorax several degrees above the surrounding air in just a few minutes. But here's the plot twist nobody tells you. This shudder isn't always about temperature. In several species, the behaviour ramps right up exactly when there's a threat nearby, particularly bats. Studies using ultrasound sensors have shown moths can detect a bat's echolocation pulses from meters away, well before any human would notice a thing in the air. And the moth's body reacts instantly, priming its flight muscles for an escape that might happen in a fraction of a second. In other words, that shudder you always found a bit odd, maybe even off-putting, could be the biological equivalent of a silent alarm going off. The moth is gearing up because its radar, far more sensitive than anything you've got in your house, has already picked up something you can't see or hear. To really get how sophisticated this is, we need to talk about the invisible war playing out in the sky above your house every single night. On one side, bats, predators armed with one of the most advanced navigation systems in nature, capable of pinpointing an insect the size of a grain of rice in pitch darkness. On the other side, the moth, seemingly fragile, no teeth, no venom, nothing flashy about its speed. And yet it survives. It has done for millions of years. How? Because the moth isn't a passive victim here. It's a strategist. Some species have evolved scales on their wings that absorb sound waves, working almost like stealth coating, cutting down the echo bouncing back to the bat. Others have developed the ability to fire off their own ultrasonic clicks, an acoustic countermeasure that jams the predator's echolocation system, like the moth is running electronic interference in a signals war. And that wing shudder you see on the wall is very often the final stage of preparation before an erratic, evasive flight, that unpredictable zigzag pattern that makes the moth nearly impossible to pin down. Picture it, a hunter kitted out with military-grade precision sonar chasing a target the size of a coin, and that target doesn't just get away, it actually outsmarts the predator's own radar. That's the level of biological sophistication hiding inside an insect most people flick off the wall without a second thought. But the moth's role doesn't stop at individual survival. Through the night, while most birds and bees are tucked away asleep, it's moths that take over pollination duties. There are flowers that only open after dark, evolved specifically to be visited by moths, with pale colours and intense scents designed to guide these insects through the gloom. Without that night shift of quiet pollinators, plenty of plant species simply wouldn't be able to reproduce. And there's one more role, perhaps the most underrated of the lot. Moths, and especially their caterpillars, are one of the most important food sources in the entire nighttime ecological chain. Bats, birds, small mammals, they all rely directly or indirectly on the population boom of caterpillars and moths to feed their own young. Studies show a single pair of insect-eating birds might need hundreds of caterpillars a day just to feed their chicks during breeding season. The moth isn't just a brilliant survivor, it's literally the fuel keeping a huge chunk of nocturnal wildlife running. Now think about what would happen if this insect, the one so many people can't stand, simply vanished from your backyard. Without moths, night-blooming flowers would lose their main pollinator and certain plant species would quietly decline, generation after generation, until they disappeared from an area altogether. Without moth caterpillars as a food source, local populations of insect-eating birds would take a measurable hit, because plenty of bird species simply don't have another protein source substantial enough to raise their chicks during certain times of year. And there's another effect too, one that's far more direct and far more annoying for anyone with a garden. Moth caterpillars are part of a natural pest control network, serving as prey for predatory wasps, spiders, and other beneficial insects that help keep your own backyard in balance. Taking that link out of the chain doesn't get rid of your insect problems, it just scrambles who's eating who. The result, documented time and again by entomologists, is often the exact opposite of what people expect when they kill off moths. Other pests, with their natural predators no longer well fed, multiply out of control. In other words, that small, quiet insect on your wall might be, without you ever realizing it, helping hold together an entire system of balance around you, like an invisible architect working away every night while you sleep. So let's recap what you've learnt today. That wing shutter on the wall isn't a defect or some meaningless tick. It's a sophisticated muscular heating system, and in plenty of cases, it's also a warning sign. The moth reacting to threats its senses pick up long before yours ever could. It's a survivor that's outwitted predators armed with one of the most advanced hunting systems in nature, using acoustic camouflage and evasive flight. It's an irreplaceable nighttime pollinator, and it's the food source underpinning a good chunk of the wildlife singing outside your window come morning. The moth never asked to be seen as a pest. It was just quietly getting on with the job it's been doing for millions of years, long before there were walls, electric lights, or rolled up newspapers in anyone's hand. Next time you spot a moth shuddering its wings on your wall, maybe you won't just see an annoying bug anymore. Maybe, just for a second, you'll see a survivor on high alert, reading signals you'll never be able to hear. If this mystery's changed the way you look at your own backyard, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Every week we unpack another hidden secret from nature that's closer to you than you'd think.